Welcome back to the ultimate speed and performance test between the brand new OnePlus 7T Pro and the new iPhone 11 Pro Max. So yeah, both of these phones have Pro in their name, but let's see which one is more Pro, which one is actually faster. The response we've received from the previous ultimate speed test between the iPhone 11 Pro Max and the Galaxy Note 10 Plus, this one here, was just amazing. So yeah, thank you guys. And this one is, even better because this is a brand new phone. The Note 10 Plus was a bit older. These two are just a few weeks apart from each other in terms of release dates. So welcome to the Ultimate Zone of Tech Speed Test series, the series in which we test out everything in terms of the performance of two devices. So not just the usual Apple Launch speed test, but also photo and video editing with 4K timelines, Wi-Fi speed test, storage speed test, RAM management, fingerprint reader versus Face ID, GPU, as well as CPU benchmarks, JavaScript performance, and so much more. So yeah, get those snacks ready. And the drinks, and let's see which one is the speed king of 2019, Apple or OnePlus. Access any region-restricted websites such as, for example, Netflix US from outside the US and make your connection private and secure by using private internet access. Check it out using the link below. Okay, so first of all, we've actually done a few things to these phones to make the comparison as fair as possible. So for example, they both have exactly the same third-party apps installed. The screen has been set to never lock on the iPhone, and I'm actually using this tweak called Kin Screen on the 7T Pro to keep the display from turning off. So yeah, normally you cannot really set it to more than 30 minutes, but with this you can set it to unlimited. The brightness has been set to the same level on both. Now they might appear a bit different because of the position of the camera lens, so do keep that in mind. Then rotation lock is off on both. There's no SIM card in any of these. Both phones are on airplane mode with Wi-Fi enabled. Now disturb mode is on, then True Tone display is turned off on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. The battery life is at 100% on both, and we've actually closed all the apps running in the background on both. So yeah, this test should be as fair as possible. And before starting the actual test, I want to talk about the specs a bit on paper and how they both look like. So the OnePlus 7T Pro comes with a Snapdragon 855 Plus processor, which is based on a 7nm process. This one has one high-performance core at 2.96 GHz, three high-performance cores at 2.42 GHz, and then four more low-performance cores at 1.78 GHz. We have 8 GB of RAM on the OnePlus 7T Pro. Now, interesting enough, the 7 Pro actually came with 12 GB. There was an option to get a 12 GB model. Now you can only get this with 8 GB of RAM. If you want to get a 12 GB, you need to buy the brand new McLaren edition of the 7T Pro, by the way. And then this one also has 256 GB of UFS 3.0 storage. Okay, so now what about the iPhone 11 Pro Max? Well, this one comes with the Apple A13 processor, which is also based on a 7nm process. This one has two high-performance cores at 2.65 GHz, and then four low-performance cores at 1.8 GHz. We then have 4 GB of LPDDR4X memory, so he has half of what the OnePlus 7T Pro has, and then also 64 GB of NVMe flash storage. So yeah, spec-wise, at least on paper, the OnePlus 7T Pro seems to blow the iPhone 11 Pro Max out of the water. Like I said, at least on paper. So let's see how this translates to actual benchmarks and actual day-to-day use. Okay, so starting off with the CPU benchmarks, we're going to run Geekbench 4 and Antutu. Oh, and Geekbench 4 was actually not available on the OnePlus 7T Pro, so we are actually running Geekbench 5 instead, and from now on in all the future tests. And here we got 761 points for the single-core performance on the OnePlus 7T Pro versus 1334 on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. So pretty much double. And multi-core performance was pretty good on both, so 2818 on the OnePlus 7T Pro versus 3,581 on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Still, the iPhone 11 Pro Max was significantly more powerful on Geekbench 5 at least than compared to the OnePlus 7T Pro. Now moving on to the Antutu benchmark, this one stresses out the CPU, the GPU, the memory, and many more. So it's a more complex benchmark, and here on the iPhone, this one scored a combined score of 458, close to 1,000 points, which is just insane. And as you can see, all of them, CPU, GPU, memory, user interface, all of them were very impressive. Unfortunately, we couldn't get this running on the OnePlus 7T Pro. It's very likely due to Android 10. This is running on Android 10, and this app was just not updated to fully support the OnePlus 7T Pro in Android 10 just yet. So yeah, once it does get updated, I'll leave a comment on this video with the actual scores. Next up, we have the GPU benchmark, starting off with Geekbench 5 Compute. And here, okay, that's a pretty significant difference. So 2,690 points for the OnePlus 7T Pro versus 6,391 on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. So yeah, that's a 2.37 times faster performance GPU-wise on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. Okay, next up we have 3D Mark Ice Storm Slingshot. This is an on-screen benchmark. And unfortunately, same as with the Antutu benchmark, this one was not playable or runnable on the OnePlus 7T Pro because of Android 10. So once it does get updated to work, I'll post a comment again just with Antutu, giving you an update on the score down. But yeah, all the other tests in this video actually managed to work perfectly on the OnePlus 7T Pro. So these are the only ones that didn't. Antutu and 3D Mark. Now, these two phones have a different resolution display. The OnePlus 7T Pro has a higher resolution display than the iPhone does, and this means that tests such as the 3D Mark will actually be rendered in a high resolution on the OnePlus 7T Pro and therefore result in a much lower score. As you can probably tell, this app, iStorm, hasn't even been updated on the iPhone. So yeah, it just looks like an iPhone 8 app, so that's pretty bad. And that's why we're going to run the FX bench now, which is actually an off-screen benchmark, which means that the results of this benchmark will be independent or unrelated to the actual screen resolution, because they will be running on the background and the resolution of the display would not be affecting the results in any way. Okay, and here the results are a bit more realistic and closer. So we have 112 frames per second on the OnePlus 7T Pro versus 160, 59 basically on the iPhone 11 Pro Max. But in an actual game, these scores would actually be a bit different, so even lower on the OnePlus 7T Pro because of the high resolution display, and even higher on the iPhone 11 Pro Max because of the lower resolution display. Okay, next up we'll be testing the JavaScript performance on both these phones. So essentially this will test out how fast a very demanding website would load, and here we're going to do the test in the native browser of both of these phones, so Chrome on the OnePlus 7T Pro and Safari on the iPhone. The lower the score, the better, and here the iPhone score is 105 milliseconds versus 338.1, so quite a big difference, more than 3 times faster on the iPhone. But what if we use Chrome on both of these phones? Well, interesting enough, the iPhone actually scores better when using Chrome. The engine is, by the way, the same on iOS, so Chrome and Safari use the same Safari engine, reason why the results are pretty much identical. So this is within the margin of error. When it comes to JavaScript performance, the iPhone is pretty much 3 times faster than the OnePlus 7T Pro is. Next up, we have Octane, Google Octane, which is another JavaScript performance benchmark, and here, as you can probably tell, Chrome versus Safari, the iPhone scores significantly higher than the OnePlus 7T Pro does. And when moving on to Chrome, the iPhone actually scores lower in Chrome this time, which is, more accurate. However, it's still significantly higher, to almost 20,000 points higher than on the OnePlus 7T Pro. Okay, next up, I want to see how fast the actual storage inside of both of these phones really is. So the OnePlus 7T Pro scores about 1.4 gigabytes per second read and 400 megabytes per second write. And the iPhone scores a bit of a lower write speed of 280 megabytes per second versus 1.6 gigabytes per second read speed. Yeah, unfortunately, as you can probably tell, there is no app, a universal app that I can use to test both storage speed test accurately on both of these phones, because they have different operating systems, iOS and Android. So yeah, in this case, this is the best that I could find. Android Bench on Android, and we have Performance Test on iOS. Okay, next up, I want to see how fast the actual Wi-Fi inside both of these phones are. So we've actually run these tests separately to see which one has, a faster Wi-Fi card. And in this case, they're pretty much identical. So 47.9 on the OnePlus 7T Pro versus 47.8, and the upload was 50 versus 46.3, so basically the same. Okay, now moving on to the big test, this is the app launch speed test. So we're going to launch quite a few apps and see which phone launches them first, and also which phone can keep more of them open in the background. Okay, so let's start a timer on both, then moving on to the CNN app. So the iPhone is quite a bit ahead, moving on to Twitter, then Instagram, then YouTube, and I'm going to look for Zone of Tech and play the first video. Okay, moving on to Safari, loading up our website until the banner is visible. Then to the camera, taking 3 selfies, moving on to Crossy Road, and we're going to tap 5 times once it loads, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, then Hitman Go. As you can probably tell, the iPhone is quite a bit ahead, but the OnePlus 7T Pro is actually catching up quite nicely. So when it comes to Hitman Go, this is one of my favorite games, by the way. You gotta try it, it's amazing, but the iPhone seems to, oh wow, the OnePlus 7T Pro is catching up. It's almost neck and neck with the iPhone. Next up we have Reigns, Game of Thrones, and let's see, the OnePlus 7T Pro is doing really well. It was doing pretty badly at the beginning, but now it's quite impressive. We're at 55 seconds at the moment, and the iPhone is already moving on to the next step, which is Asphalt 9 Legends. Now, this is a very demanding app with lots of menus to press and buttons and lots of in-app purchases, which I don't really like. The game looks awesome in terms of graphics, but it's one of those games that it's filled with in-app purchases. But other than that, it's a great game, and it's also a very demanding one. So let's see. The iPhone has already loaded up the game. The OnePlus 7T Pro is still going through the menus. So the iPhone has now loaded the game. Moving on to the next one, we have Minecraft, and essentially what we're going to do with Minecraft is that we're going to load a specific seed, so that both phones actually load the exact same map instead of a random one. So let's see, the iPhone is now creating the map with that seed, which is the coastal map. The OnePlus 7T Pro is almost there, and as you can see, the map is fully playable. Moving on to Photoshop, what we're gonna do here is load up an 8K image, apply a few filters, exactly the same ones on both phones, by the way, and then we're going to export this in 85% resolution. Okay, and the iPhone has now finished exporting the image, and moving on to Video Shop, we're actually going to load the same video file on both, with Ren here, the dog, the office dog, the Zenotech dog. Yeah, this was actually shot with a Panasonic GH5, so the footage is actually coming from an external camera and not any of these phones, because otherwise it would be a biased comparison, since, you know, the footage would obviously be more optimized on the phone that it was actually shot on. So we're going to export this 4K clip to 1080p file, and the iPhone has just finished in just 2 minutes and 32 seconds and 84 milliseconds, and the OnePlus 7T Pro is almost there. Come on, OnePlus. And let's take a look at the final results. So we have 2 minutes and 43 seconds and 24 milliseconds. Okay, so both of these phones did really well. The iPhone was a bit faster, but not as much faster as I expected it to be honest. So good job, OnePlus. Usually the iPhone is the one that wins the Apple on speed tests. Okay, now moving on to the RAM management test, I want to see which one of these phones can actually keep more of those apps open in the background. So as you probably know, the iPhone has 4 GB of RAM versus 8 GB of RAM on the OnePlus 7T Pro. Okay, so let's open up the clock app, and both of these phones had it in the background, so that's good. CNN, and it had to reload on the OnePlus, interesting enough. BBC News, it's fully loaded on both. Twitter, fully loaded on both. Instagram, fully loaded on both. We have YouTube, fully loaded. Chrome versus Safari, still loaded on both, so that's good. Chrome actually had to reload on the OnePlus 7T Pro, our website. The camera was actually open on both, just the back camera on, oh, there you go. Crossroad had to reload on the OnePlus 7T Pro, that's interesting. The iPhone still had it loaded in the background. Hitman Go, fully loaded on both, just in the pause menu on the OnePlus. So both of them are doing pretty good. The OnePlus is doing a bit worse than I expected. So now we have Rains. Okay, then Asphalt. Okay, interesting. So Asphalt actually had to reload on both. However, it was, let's say, just more loaded on the iPhone because we didn't have to wait that long. So yeah, so far the iPhone is actually ahead. Okay, next up we have Minecraft. Fully loaded. Oh no, nope. Had to reload on both, kinda. So we did have a bit of wait, but the game is actually fully playable. So I would call this, you know, pretty much the same on both, as they both had to semi-reloaded. Okay, next up we have Photoshop. This one is fully loaded on both. However, it's just the actual photos and not the project. Speaking of projects, Video Shop is fully loaded on both, and that's about it. Interesting enough, the OnePlus 7T Pro actually did a worse job than the iPhone did. Yeah, so the iPhone 11 Pro Max has better RAM management with 4 GB of RAM than the OnePlus 7T Pro with 8. Interesting enough, I was not expecting this. Moving on to Face ID versus the fingerprint reader on the OnePlus 7T Pro. So here, you actually have to wake up the display on both of these before you can use the fingerprint or Face ID on the iPhone. And as you can probably tell, this is in slow motion, by the way, the OnePlus 7T Pro is noticeably faster than the iPhone is when it comes to unlocking. Okay, so in the end, which one of these phones, the OnePlus 7T Pro or the iPhone 11 Pro Max, was faster? And interesting enough, and I was not expecting this, the iPhone was actually faster. It not only launched apps faster, but it also managed to keep more of them open in the background with half of the amount of RAM, 4 GB versus 8 GB on the OnePlus 7T Pro. Now, honestly, the OnePlus 7T Pro has something that the iPhone does not, and it makes the performance and day-to-day use feel actually much faster than the iPhone does, and that is the 90Hz refresh rate display. Essentially, whenever you're using the OnePlus 7T Pro and just navigating through the menus, everything is rendered at 50% more frame rates, so you get 50% more fluid animations than compared to the iPhone. So yeah, there you go. From using these both, yes, the iPhone 11 Pro Max is more powerful and faster, but this one feels faster just because of the 90Hz refresh rate display. If you have an iPad Pro and then you compare an iPad Pro to an iPhone, it's basically the same thing. The iPad Pro feels much faster, even if you have an iPad Pro 10.5 inch from 2017, that ProMotion display, that 120Hz refresh rate panel, will make the iPad feel so much faster than even a brand new iPhone 11 Pro Max, which is more powerful than a 2017 iPad Pro is. And that's the same story with the OnePlus 7T Pro. But yeah, this has been pretty much it for this video. Definitely check out the other one, the iPhone 11 Pro Max versus the Note 10 Plus comparison, and definitely subscribe notifications if you want to see more in-depth tech videos like this one, hopefully was. And if you want to buy one of these phones, do consider buying them off of Amazon. By the way, the return policy and the customer support on Amazon is just amazing. much better than Apple's. Check out this video talking about my experience with Apple's customer support. So yeah, if you buy these off of Amazon, you also support a channel because Amazon gives us a small commission from their sales. You don't have to pay anything and you support a channel. So links for both of these are in the description box down below. Oh, and don't forget to check out our website, zenotech.com/articles, for articles, written articles on the actual videos that we do and also on some more interesting topics, such as the Microsoft event, for example. So yeah, check that out. And this has been pretty much it for this one. I'm Daniel, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Zenotech, signing out.